family reunion ended with 3 arrests. Nobody expected Mom to go first. The police arrived before dessert. Nobody expected who they arrested first. We were all standing in my sister's backyard, paper plates in our hands, pretending this family reunion wasn't already hanging by a thread, when 2 police cruisers rolled slowly up the driveway. My mother dropped the serving spoon into the potato salad. My cousin Marla whispered, "What did he do now?" She was looking at my brother, Grant. So was everyone else. Grant had always been the problem in our family. Bad temper, bad debts, bad choices. If police showed up anywhere near us, people naturally looked at him first. But the first officer didn't walk toward Grant. He walked straight toward my mother and said, "Mrs. Lawson, you need to come with us." For 1 second, nobody moved. Then my mother laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a confused laugh. The same sharp little laugh she used my whole life whenever someone dared question her. "There must be a mistake," she said. The officer didn't smile. "There isn't." That was the moment I knew the reunion hadn't brought our family back together. It had finally exposed us. My name is Julia, and I almost didn't go to that reunion. 3 weeks earlier, my mother called me while I was at work. "We're having a family reunion," she announced, like she was inviting me to a royal ceremony. "Your Aunt Lorraine is coming down, your cousins, everyone." "That's nice," I said carefully. "You'll be there." It wasn't a question. I stared at the spreadsheet on my computer and felt that old pressure settle on my chest. My mother, Vivian Lawson, had a way of making even silence feel like disobedience. "I'll check my schedule." "No, Julia, you'll come. After everything this family has been through, we need unity." Unity. That was Mom's favorite word when she wanted everyone quiet. Our family had not been united in years, not since my father died, not since his will disappeared, not since Grant accused Mom of selling Dad's lake property without telling us, not since my younger sister, Tessa, stopped speaking to me because I asked too many questions. I said, "Is this about Dad's estate?" Mom's voice cooled. "Your father has been dead for 4 years, let him rest. He would rest better if we knew what happened to his papers." "Don't start." That was another one of her phrases. Don't start meant don't remember. Don't start meant don't ask why Dad's bank account was nearly empty when he died. Don't start meant don't mention the locked metal box he kept in the garage, the one that vanished before the funeral. I almost told her I wasn't coming. Then she said, "Grant will be there." That stopped me. Grant hadn't attended a family event in 2 years. He had been angry, suspicious, and broke. He claimed Mom had cheated all of us, but he never proved it. After a while, people stopped listening. "What changed?" I asked. "He apologized." That didn't sound like Grant. "For what?" "For causing trouble," Mom said. "He wants to make peace." I knew then something was wrong. Grant didn't make peace. Grant exploded, disappeared, then came back with proof nobody wanted to hear. So I said yes. The reunion was held at Tessa's house, a big place with white columns, a new patio, and a backyard that looked like a magazine spread. Her husband, Nalin, had done well in real estate, or so everyone said. I arrived early with a fruit tray and a bad feeling. Tessa opened the door wearing a bright yellow dress, and the tight smile she saved for church people and relatives she disliked. "You came," she said. "You sound surprised. I thought you'd be too busy judging everyone." There it was. Not even inside yet. I stepped past her. "Good to see you too." The house smelled like barbecue and lemon cleaner. Family photos lined the hallway, but I noticed there were none of Dad. Not one. In the kitchen, Mom stood arranging deviled eggs like she was setting a trap. She wore pearls, white pants, and her favorite expression, wounded dignity. "Julia," she said, "try not to ruin today." I brought fruit. That's not what I meant. Before I could answer, Grant walked in through the back door. He looked thinner than I remembered. His hair was longer, his face rough with stubble, but his eyes were clear. That surprised me. Grant used to look like a man running from something. That day, he looked like a man walking straight toward it. Mom stiffened. Tessa said, "Grant, you made it." He nodded once, wouldn't miss it. Our eyes met. He didn't smile. He mouthed 2 words. Don't leave. A chill ran through me. By noon, the backyard was full. Aunt Lorraine sat under an umbrella, criticizing everyone's children. Cousins filled plates. Kids ran across the lawn. Nolan stood at the grill acting like king of the reunion. Mom moved from table to table, accepting compliments like tribute. She looks wonderful, someone whispered. She's so strong after losing Frank. I gripped my plastic cup. Strong. That was what people called women who controlled the story before anyone else could tell the truth. Grant stayed near the fence, barely eating. I found him beside the cooler. What's going on? I asked. He looked around before answering. Not here. You told Mom you apologized. I told Mom what she wanted to hear. Why? So she'd make sure everyone came. My stomach tightened. Grant. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. It was old, creased, and faded. Dad stood beside his lake cabin holding a shovel, smiling. Behind him was a small wooden shed. I remembered that shed. What am I looking at? Grant tapped the back corner of the photo. Dad buried something there. I almost laughed. That sounds insane. I thought so too. Then why show me? Because 2 months before he died, Dad called me. He said if anything happened to him, I needed to check the shed floor. I stared at him. You never told me that. You weren't speaking to me. That was true, and it hurt. Back then, Grant had borrowed money from everyone, missed Dad's last birthday, and crashed his truck after drinking. I thought he was just making more excuses when he said something was wrong with Mom. What did you find? I asked. Grant's jaw tightened. Nothing, the shed was cleaned out before I got there. Mom sold the property. Exactly. Grant, that doesn't prove. He leaned closer. I have proof now. Before he could say more, Mom called out from across the yard. Grant, come sit with your family. He slipped the photo back into his pocket. Later, he said. But later almost didn't happen. During lunch, Nolan stood and tapped his fork against a glass. I just want to say how grateful we are to have everyone here, he said, smiling like a politician. Family matters, especially after tough years. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Tessa reached for her hand. Grant stared at them both. Nolan continued, Vivian has carried this family with grace, and today is about healing. That word made Grant laugh under his breath. Everyone heard it. Nolan's smile hardened. Something funny. Grant stood slowly, a little. Mom whispered, sit down. Grant ignored her. I think healing starts with truth. The backyard went quiet except for the kids near the fence. Tessa snapped, not today. Today is perfect, Grant said. Everyone's here. Mom rose from her chair. Grant, you promised. I promised to attend. I didn't promise to lie. My pulse pounded. Grant turned to the family. Dad didn't die broke. Aunt Lorraine gasped. Mom's face went pale, then red. How dare you? Grant pointed at her. He had money, land, accounts, and somehow after he died, everything disappeared. Nolan stepped forward. You need to stop before you embarrass yourself. Grant smiled without humor. That's rich coming from you. That was when I saw it. Fear. Not on Grant's face. On Nolan's. Tessa noticed too. Her mouth parted slightly, then shut. Mom said, your brother is unwell. He has been spreading these lies for years. Grant reached into his pocket again, but Nolan moved fast. He knocked Grant's hand down. The photograph fluttered onto the grass. Grant shoved him. Nolan shoved back. Apple yelled, chairs scraped. A child started crying. I grabbed the photo from the grass before anyone could step on it. On the back, in Dad's handwriting, were 4 words I hadn't noticed before. Ask Vivian about June. June. My mother's middle name was June. I looked at Mom. She was staring at the photo like it was alive. Then she looked at me. And I knew. She recognized it. The reunion broke into angry little groups after that. Mom went inside. Tessa followed her. Nolan stayed by the grill pretending nothing had happened, but his hands shook as he flipped burgers no one wanted. Grant disappeared around the side yard. I found him near his truck. You said you had proof. He opened the passenger door and pulled out a folder. Inside were bank statements, copies of property transfers, and a handwritten letter sealed in a plastic sleeve. My breath caught. Is that Dad's handwriting? Grant nodded. I got it from Mr. Haskins. Dad's old attorney. I thought he retired. He did, but Dad left a duplicate envelope with him. Haskins said he mailed the original after Dad died, but Mom claimed she never got it. What's in the letter? Grant handed it to me. My hands trembled as I read. Dad wrote that if anything happened to him suddenly, we were to investigate any transfers made in the 6 months before his death. He said he had discovered forged signatures, missing funds, and pressure from someone inside the family. Someone inside the family. At the bottom, one sentence made my knees weak. Vivian knows more than she admits, but she is not acting alone. I looked up, who? Grant opened the folder wider and showed me a copy of a wire transfer. $50,000. From Dad's business account to a company I didn't recognize. Pierce Ridge Holdings. Grant pointed to the registration page. Owner, Nolan Pierce. Tessa's husband. No, I whispered. Yes. I looked toward the house. Through the kitchen window, I could see Mom speaking sharply to Tessa. Tessa knows. I don't know, Grant said, but Nolan does. Anger rose so fast, it almost made me dizzy. Why didn't you bring this to police? I did. You did. Grant nodded toward the road. They asked me to come today. My mouth went dry. The police know. They know enough, but they wanted everyone in one place. I took a step back. Grant, what did you do? Before he could answer, Tessa screamed from inside the house. We ran. In the kitchen, Mom had one hand on the counter, breathing hard. Tessa stood near the sink, crying. Nolan was holding the folder. The folder Grant had left in his truck. I turned to Grant, his face changed. His truck door had been open. Nolan must have gone outside. You stole from my truck, Grant said. Nolan held up the papers. You brought fake documents to my home. Grant lunged, but I blocked him. Stop, I said. Nolan looked at me. Julia, don't get pulled into his madness. Then explain the transfer. His jaw clenched. Tessa whispered, Nolan. Mom snapped, nobody is explaining anything to Julia. That was the first honest thing she said all day. I looked at my sister. You didn't know. Tessa stared at Nolan. He said nothing. That silence answered her. Tessa covered her mouth. Mom slapped the folder onto the counter. This family has survived because I kept it together. Your father was weak. He trusted the wrong people. He would have lost everything. Grant said, so you stole it first. I protected it. For who? I asked. Mom looked at Tessa. My sister froze. The room went dead quiet. Nolan said, Vivian, don't. But Mom was too angry to stop. She deserved more than the rest of you, Mom said. Tessa stayed. Tessa helped. Tessa gave me grandchildren. You and Grant only brought shame. It felt like the floor shifted under me. All these years, I said slowly, you told us there was nothing left. There wasn't, Mom said, not after debts. Grant slammed his hand on the counter. Liar. Nolan pointed at him. Get out of my house. Grant stepped closer. Your house, paid for with Dad's money. Tessa looked like she might faint. I turned to her. Did you know? She shook her head, tears spilling over. I knew Mom helped with the down payment. She said it was from savings. Nolan muttered, Tessa. She backed away from him. What did you do? For a moment, Nolan's mask dropped. He wasn't charming. He wasn't confident. He was cornered. Then he did something I never expected. He smiled at Grant. You think I'm the worst one here? Grant narrowed his eyes. Nolan looked at me. Ask your brother why he really disappeared 2 years ago. Grant went still. My stomach turned. Nolan laughed softly. You didn't tell them. Mom's eyes darted to Grant. Tessa whispered, tell us what? Nolan said, Grant took money too. The words hit the room like a thrown glass. I looked at my brother. Grant. He didn't deny it. That hurt worse than if he had shouted. Nolan stepped forward. Your hero brother found out about the transfers and demanded a cut to stay quiet. Grant's face twisted. That's not what happened. But you took the money. Grant looked at me. And I knew he had. My throat tightened. How much? He swallowed. 20,000. Tessa cried harder. Mom whispered, I told you he was no better. For one awful moment I thought the whole truth had collapsed into mud. Mom stole, Nolan stole, Grant stole, everyone had dirty hands. Then Grant said, I took it because Dad's medical bills were unpaid. Mom scoffed, don't you dare. Grant turned on her. You drained his accounts while he was sick. The hospital called me because you stopped answering. I paid what I could. I stared at Mom. She looked away. That was confirmation. Grant continued, voice shaking now. I was ashamed. I should have told Julia. I should have told everyone. But I didn't steal from Dad. I took money Nolan offered me because I thought it was still Dad's money and I used it for Dad. Nolan laughed, convenient. Grant reached into his back pocket and pulled out receipts. Hospital payments. Care facility invoices. Checks made out in Grant's name. I took them with numb fingers. Dates, amounts, Dad's name. It was true. Not clean. But true. Mom whispered, you always were dramatic. That was when I stopped being afraid of her. For 4 years, I had let my mother's certainty overpower my own memory. I had let her turn Grant into the family villain because it was easier than admitting the woman who raised us might be capable of something worse. I looked at Tessa, call the police. Nolan said, nobody is calling anyone. Then red and blue lights flashed across the kitchen window. They were already there. Mom's face changed first. Then Nolan's. Grant closed his eyes like he had been holding his breath for years. The officers entered through the side gate. Our relatives gathered behind them, whispering, filming, pretending they hadn't spent years ignoring Grant's warnings. The lead officer asked, Vivian Lawson. Mom lifted her chin, yes. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. Aunt Lorraine screamed. Tessa grabbed the counter. Mom looked at Grant with pure hatred. You did this. Grant said, Dad did. The officer took Mom by the wrist. That was when everyone expected Nolan to be next. But the second officer walked past him. Straight to Tessa. My sister's face drained of color. No, she whispered. No, I didn't know. The officer said, Tessa Pierce, you're being detained for questioning related to the transfer and concealment of estate assets. She burst into tears. I didn't know what Nolan did. Nolan backed away. I stepped between them. What concealment? The officer looked at me carefully. We have messages indicating Mrs. Pierce was notified last year that some funds used for this property may have been improperly obtained. Tessa shook her head wildly. I didn't understand. But I saw the truth in her face. She had known something. Maybe not everything. But enough. I thought that was the second arrest. It wasn't. As they led Mom toward the yard, Nolan suddenly bolted. He shoved past my cousin, knocked over a chair, and ran toward the side fence. Grant moved faster. He tackled Nolan onto the grass. People screamed again. An officer cuffed Nolan while Grant rolled away, breathing hard. Nolan shouted, Vivian planned it. She forged Frank's signature. I only moved the money. Mom screamed from beside the cruiser, shut your mouth. And there it was. The larger truth, spilled in front of everyone. Not one betrayal. A partnership. Mom had forged Dad's signature while he was sick. Nolan had created shell companies to move the money. Tessa had discovered enough to question it, then stayed quiet because the house, the lifestyle, the perfect image all depended on silence. 3 arrests. Before dessert. The reunion ended with half the family crying in the driveway, and the other half pretending they had always suspected something. I stood beside Grant as the cruisers pulled away. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, I should have told you sooner. Yes, I said. He nodded, accepting it. Then I said, I should have believed you sooner. His eyes filled, but he looked away. Tessa called me 3 days later from a lawyer's office. She sounded smaller than I had ever heard her. I didn't think it was real, she said. Nolan told me your brother was trying to ruin us. Mom said Dad wanted me taken care of. And you believed that. I wanted to. That was the saddest answer she could have given. Wanting a lie had cost her everything. The investigation took months. Mom accepted a plea rather than face trial. Nolan tried to blame her, then blame Tessa, then blame Grant, but the paper trail was too clear. Tessa was not charged with the worst of it, but she lost the house. She lost her marriage. She lost the perfect life she had defended so fiercely. Grant wasn't charged. The hospital receipts saved him, but shame punished him longer than the law ever could. As for Dad's estate, what remained was divided properly. It wasn't as much as it should have been. Money rarely survives betrayal intact. But the lake property had not been fully sold. A small strip of land near the water was still in Dad's name because Nolan had made a filing mistake. The old cabin was gone, the shed was gone too. But the lake was still there, quiet and silver under the clouds. Grant handed me a thermos of coffee. Dad would have hated all this, he said. Yes, I said, but he would have loved that the truth came out. Grant looked at me. Do you think families recover from something like this? I watched the water ripple against the bank. Not the way they were, I said. Maybe that's the point. Because the family we had been was built on fear, silence, and pretending Mom's version was the only version. That family was gone. And for the first time, I didn't mourn it. A year later, we held another reunion. Smaller this time. No speeches, no fake unity, no perfect table settings. Just people who wanted to be there. Grant grilled chicken badly. I brought fruit again. Tessa came late, nervous and pale, carrying a homemade pie. Nobody knew what to say to her at first. Then Grant handed her a plate. She whispered, "Thank you." He said, "Don't make me regret it." She gave a broken little laugh, and somehow that was enough for the moment. After dinner, we sat near the lake and watched the sun go down. There was no dessert disaster. No police. No secrets waiting under the table. Just the quiet, uncomfortable beginning of something honest. And maybe that was the real inheritance Dad left us. Not money. Not land. The truth. Because once the truth finally arrived, it arrested more than 3 people. It arrested every lie that had been holding our family hostage.